Good day to you, all of you. I'm Sean Xavier Alcalita, so I'll be proceeding to the next chapter, which is the moral agent. So before we proceed to the moral agent, so let us go first with the orientation to ethics. And first things first, that we have to deal with about the rules. So it seems that some people don't like rules because they feel restricted. They feel that they're not free. They feel that they cannot do whatever they want to do. But in fact, life cannot be organized without the rules. People always need rules and laws in order to live and deal together. Now, all the rules and laws have the same purpose. No? They organize the relations between individuals and the society to make it clear um, what is right and wrong, and what happens if somebody breaks the rules. Uh, they are designed to ensure fairness, safety, and respect for other people's right. Now, what's the importance of following the rules? No? So, okay, what is a rule? First, rules refer to a set of guidelines which have been put in place in different countries and communities and have been accepted by all. Okay, so when used appropriately, if it used correctly, rules provide a sense of predictability and consistency for people, thereby promoting what? So what's the rule promotes? It promotes physical, moral, social, and emotional safety. Okay, now ethics is concerned with other people's interests, with the interests of society, God's interests, with ultimate goods, and so on. Then, rules are specific set of norms of behavior, regulations, and laws established on purpose to regulate the life in the community. Okay, so you have here the classroom rules, no? So this is usually being elaborated during the first day of the class, but since that we are not in our class, so because we are facing the difficulty in our life because of the pandemic, so we use the internet, and we use the internet to have our as a shall I say, um, as one of the means, no, to handle our classes. Now let's go back, no. So classroom rules: listen carefully, follow directions, work quietly, excuse me, respect others, and play safely. So why do we have rules? Now, so one of the purpose why, or the reasons why we have rules, because they enable people to organize all the processes correctly, starting from house chores and ending with more complicated issues such as functioning as whole country. Moreover, a well-developed system of rules help humanity to avoid chaos and many problems that may be caused by the lack of regulations. So therefore, laws dictate what is proper and what is wrong. So that is why, class, that um, the law is created, no, for the sake of the common good. That is why, class, Aristotle defined law is an ordinance of reason promulgated by a certain authority who is in charge of a community for the sake of the common good. It's just the same as with the rules. The rules are there in order to promote for a common good, not for the good of yourself, but for the good of everyone. Okay, so the importance of rules. So rules are important because they tend to protect the weaker class in the society, as they might be in a disadvantageous position if rules are broken. Next, they provide a stable environment and human coexistence in a society, which leads to peace and development. Another one of reason is to avoid punishment. That is why those who are students here in psychology, you know this guy, B.F. Skinner, Burroughs Frederick Skinner, is the one of the key proponents of the operant conditioning, di ba? As what he said, that behavior is shaped and maintained by its consequences. So once if you give reinforcement, I've said reinforcement, so behavior can be modified by means of reinforcement and or punishment. And rules, the setting of rules is a behaviorist perspective. No, it's a behaviorist manner. It's because when you impose a certain rule, behavior itself can be maintained. That's what B.F. Skinner meant in this, in his scope. Okay, so let's move further to the main idea about ethics. No? So what is ethics? Or another name for ethics is moral philosophy, which may define in a professional way as the scientific study about moral judgments. So our moral judgments are based if the action is right or wrong. Moreover, the subject of ethics consists of the fundamental issues of practical decision making, and its major concerns include the nature of ultimate value and the standards by which human actions can be judged right or wrong. That is a moral judgment. Okay, so next one, it comes from the Greek word ethos, which can mean a custom, a habit, character, or it could mean a disposition. Okay, so it's not only about morality or particular courses of action, but it's also about the goodness of individuals. That is why everyone is good as far as ethics is concerned, and what it means to live a good life. Okay, so let's move further. Basic branches of ethics. So, first one, basic branch of ethics is what we call it the normative ethics. So, what do we mean by normative ethics? In which actions are judged by their merits, no, allowing societies to develop codes of conduct for behavior. So, therefore, here in normative ethics, actions are the basis of determining the morality. So, if your action is right, therefore, the moral here, the morality of your actions is right itself, no? And if you done something evil, therefore what you did is totally evil. No? So there is a moral standard in normative ethics. That is why the best example here is the golden rule. It was first um, elaborated by Confucius in his Analects, no? Do unto others as you would have them do to you. So here, what does it mean, the golden rule? So anyway, in the chapter 2, we can elaborate what the golden rule means. So here in the golden rule, kung in Filipino idea or in Filipino perspective, kung anong mang bagay na ayaw mangyari sa'yo, huwag mong gawin sa iba. Or, uh, overtly speaking, kung ano man ang bagay na gustong mangyari sa'yo, gawin mo. So, what does it mean here? The meaning of the golden rule is here. The core, this one here, no? At the right portion. The core of the golden rule is a moral obligation. So, in the moral obligation that we are treating others ethically for their sake, not ours. So, we're treating the other people, others, as an end in themselves, no? Okay, and we should not use others for our own sake, even if it is better than the way they treat us. Why? What does it? Why? Bakit? Nga naman. So, not because it's advantageous, because it is the right thing to do, no? And because the way we treat others is about who we are. It determines on who we are as a person, not who they are. So that's the explanation from Michael Josephson. Okay, so that's a basic branch, one of the basic branches of ethics, normative ethics. So shall we move? Okay. So this is Cayetano, no? When um, uh, when there was a news that an EU Parliament is trying to meddle in our affairs, no, in our political affairs in our country, he reacted by saying that here in the Philippines, bilog ang mundo. Time will come that the Philippines will be the ones to impose economic sanctions in your own countries. So it would so remember that in everything, do to others what you want them to you. So that is what he said here. And moreover, this is what also President Duterte has said in his video.
Very good question now. Kasi, magsabi si Trillanes, bakit ako lang? Karami namin pumasok dyan sa kudita-kudita na yan. Kaya ang sagot ko sa kanya is, the President's prerogative. You read the Philippine Constitution. The President shall have the power to pardon and grant amnesty with the concurrence, with the agreement with Congress. Yan lang. Ngayon, what is the lesson learned? Bakit tinarget ko siya? Well, I only have one more. Pareho man tayo na tatrabaho lang rin. I will just quote, correct me if I'm wrong. Do not do unto others what you would not want them to do to you.
Okay, let's proceed. Okay, so next one is the descriptive ethics, no? Um, Descriptive ethics, on the other hand, ask what the people think is moral. So therefore, in descriptive ethics, there's no absolute moral standard insofar as descriptive ethics is concerned. Here, this branch of ethics does not actually claim that things are right or wrong, so it is relative, but simply studies how individuals or societies define their morals. Um, what makes something right or wrong in a specific culture? Now, I just give an example here, no, with regards to religion. For example, um, I just give an example about in the Roman Catholic Church that the people or the Roman Catholics, um, they venerate the sacred images. Okay, so that's the religious practice, and moreover, it's not only the religious practice, but it also entails the expression of their own faith. But in the other hand, in the other sects, like um, like the born again Christians would say that it is immoral because it is idolatry. So therefore, what is the standard of faith in the Roman Catholicism does not apply to the moral standard into the other religious sect. The the same as also with the born again to the Catholic Church, that they do not have the right to impose their moral standard. It's because of the differences of interpretation of the sacred scriptures. So, unsa may buhato nato ani? So, what are we going to do with this? So, in this case, um, respeto na lang, di ba? Oh, because it cannot change anything, no? Not unless that today karon man good class today, it is not really debates are already gone are the debates na gyud actually, because ang uso naman jud karon, what is trending nowadays is ecumenism, that the church nowadays is very open to enter into a religious dialogue with the non-Catholic religious groups, no? So para nako guys, dili na ta maglali sa ana kay actually di naman na angay lalisan kay ngano man pareho ra man tag padulngan, pareho ra man tag Ginoo nga gituuhan, di ba? So respeto lang. O yun na ra. Okay, so let's proceed further. Okay, so here, um, let's proceed with the video.
Hi, I'm Kelly Schiffman. I'm a PhD student at Yale University, and today I want to talk about the distinction between normative and descriptive claims. So people make claims all the time. Someone might say, the sky's beautiful today, or I just saw a UFO, or Chris Rock is hilarious, or the Golden Gate Bridge is in San Francisco. Now, of course, it's important for us to figure out whether claims like these are true or false. But before we can do that, it's important to understand what sort of claim it is. Philosophers find it useful to distinguish between two different sorts of claims: normative claims and descriptive claims. When you make a descriptive claim, you're describing something. You merely express your understanding of how something is or could be, without offering any, even implicit evaluation of it relative to a standard or ideal or alternative. Examples of descriptive claims include: the moon is made of cheese, dinosaurs used to exist, Obama's president, that boy has large ears, I could have more money. Notice that even if I'm likely to have an opinion about somebody having large ears or the fact that I could have more money, this opinion isn't being expressed in the descriptive claim itself. Based just on the claim, you can't tell whether I think the way things are is better or worse than the way they could be. When you make a normative claim, you express your evaluation of something. When you evaluate something, you're assessing it, often implicitly, relative to some standard or ideal or alternative way that it could be. It's to say that something is, well, at least in some respect, better than or worse than or on par with some standard or ideal or alternative. When we make normative claims, we often use words like good or bad or better than. For example, Leonardo DiCaprio is a really good actor. That's a normative claim. Or that tomatoes taste bad, but ketchup tastes great. Or my math class is no better than and no worse than my English class. These are all normative claims. They contain an element of evaluation. Normative claims also include words like should or shouldn't, or right and wrong. For example, you should do your homework. You shouldn't pick your nose. It's not okay to steal a candy bar. Sending a thank you note is the right thing to do. These are also normative claims. But there are many more evaluative words that can appear in normative claims. Consider the following. It's fine to eat 3 burgers a day. The movie was ridiculous. Broccoli is disgusting. Video games are awesome. And it's not cool to skip school. These are all normative claims as well. Now, once we figure out whether a claim is normative or descriptive, that helps us to assess its truth, answer certain questions, settle certain disagreements. Consider a case in which you think our neighbor's car is red, and I think it's not. I think it's blue. Here we're disagreeing about a descriptive claim. So all we need to do to settle the disagreement is to figure out whether that descriptive claim is true or not. We need to figure out how the world is. So contrast this with a case in which you say that red cars are better than blue cars, and I say that blue cars are better than red cars. Here, we're disagreeing over normative claims. So what we need to do is sort through that. For example, I might argue that blue cars are better than red cars because red cars get pulled over disproportionately by the police. Here we're working through a normative issue. Either way, getting clear on whether something is a normative claim or a descriptive claim is the first step towards figuring out truths and towards settling debates like this.
Okay, so let's proceed now. Why we study ethics. Now, one of the reasons why we study ethics is not to gain grades in our subject matter, but there is something more than earning grades in this subject, no? So the serious student in ethics will find this work both profitable and interesting to the highest degree. Now, one of the key reasons why we study this ethics is because in order to widen our understanding concerning about the moral problems, no? As he becomes acquainted with the thoughts of the other men. So we're not only acquainted with one single school of thought, but on moral different moral philosophies of different schools of thought in philosophy, no? Because philosophy does not only cover only to one single school of thought, but entails also the whole. So in treating ethics, we are going to treat the holistic aspect in understanding what is right and what is evil, no? And how to live a good life, because different philosophers have different moral philosophies and moral standards set in their own based on their own example, no? Next. Now, aside from that, as I've said, your moral problems understanding will be widened, and also your critical faculties will be trained. So you'll know the reasons for his moral convictions and also the reasons for the moral convictions of others. So it also follows that. And the study of ethics will enable the person to understand better what his conscience is. So it is also to train our conscience. Mm, okay. And moreover, a book, your textbook or ebook that I've required you to buy can by no means prescribe for anyone what should be the vocation in life. No. Okay, so let's proceed further. Now let's move over to the moral agent. So, what is a moral agent? So, philosophers often disagree about which of these and other conditions are vital. No? So, the term moral agency is used in different degrees of stringency depending upon what one regards its qualifying conditions. Okay, so according to Immanuel Kant, no, that uh, moral philosophy about the moral agency about Immanuel Kant is the most stringent, since they are different senses of moral agency. Answers to question like, are collectives moral agents? So depend upon which sense is being used. Okay. It is well, however, that reason should know its limits, and we are not to seek for the origin of the moral obligation in any of what are merely results of this exercise. But anyway, concerning about uh, moral philosophy, Immanuel Kant, it will be dealt with in in chapter 2 as well as in chapter 5 later on. And I will try to elaborate moreover about his moral philosophy. Okay, so let's move further about morality. No? Um, Here, morality can be defined as the standards that an individual or group has about what is right and wrong, good or evil. So it is an informal public system applying to all rational persons, governing behavior that affects others, no, and has a lessening of evil or harm as its goal. Morality is a complex concepts and philosophical beliefs by which an individual determines whether his or her actions are right or wrong. Okay, so who is the morality can be used? So as I've said, it has been explained earlier, diba? Descriptively, here, descriptively, to refer to certain codes of conduct put forward by a society or group. So as I've said, it's an example is the religion, no? Because we have different moral standards in each religion. Because one religious sect cannot impose this moral standard to the other religious sect. For example, Roman Catholics uh, to born again Christians, as well as the born again Christians to the Roman Catholics as well. Next one is normatively, to refer to a code of conduct that, given specified conditions, would be put forward by all rational persons. Okay, so next one. So, what are the key features of morality? Okay, number one, you already read it here, that every one of us, all of us experience a sense of moral obligation and accountability. One cannot doubt successfully a phenomenon of its own existence, namely its moral experience. Even philosophers like Kai Nielsen recommend that one ought to act or follow some rules, policies, practices, or principles. Even an atheist, in the name of Richard Dawkins, declares that there are some moral instructions on how we ought to behave. Next one. So actually, moral values and moral absolutes exist. So it's hard to deny the objective reality of moral values. Actions like rape, torture, child abuse are not just socially unacceptable behavior, but are moral abominations. So, do you remember a certain um, broadcaster from a uh, from a popular TV network who committed sexual relations with someone, an OFW, who was at that time a minor. Oh, you know that one already. So, he's a popular newscaster, by the way. Okay, and what he did until now is many people bashed him because what he did at that time, that was 22 years ago or 21 years, that was an abominable act, no? So it's not only unacceptable behavior, but the moral abominations. When I say abomination, that means yuck, or something that you do not, something that you hate, no? So therefore, moral absolutes exist. No matter, so all people, we have the sense of about we have the sense of morality. But anyway, I can explain that one further on the next features. So that is why moral law does exist. So when we accept the existence of goodness, we must affirm that a moral law on the basis of which to differentiate between good and evil. Moreover, it is known to all of us. That is why it is a natural law. Um, Natural law, for example, natural law ethics. It is a moral philosophy of Saint Thomas Aquinas. No? What does it mean? It's known to humans. What is the natural law? Natural law states that all of us are created by God. That's according to Saint Thomas Aquinas. And when God created our souls, God has already pre-installed into our souls a certain moral sensibilities in order for us to distinguish what is right and wrong based on our common sense, the use of our common sense. So that is what we call it a natural law. That's why morality is objective as well as absolute. Mm. So there is a real right and there is a real wrong. It is universal. Therefore, it applies to all. And it's immutably true, independent of whether anyone believes it or not. Next one is moral judgments. It must be supported by reason. So, moral judgments are different from mere expressions of personal preference. So they require backing by reasons. In the absence of such reasons, they are merely arbitrary. Now, let's proceed here to the main point, idea. A moral agent? Can a dog be a moral agent? Now, there, here in the comic strip, there you have it. He gave his wife chocolate for Valentine's Day, a gift of love and kindness, or the vicious act of a calculated killer, you decide. You know already that chocolates are poisonous for our beloved pet dogs. The defendant sat down when he was told, therefore he's a good boy. Case dismissed. Okay, so it's talking about the dogs, but actually we're talking here as man. Why? It's because man is a moral agent. Why is it that a moral agent? It is because that we are capable of acting with reference to what is right and what is wrong. So, in acting what is right or wrong, therefore, we can be held responsible for the behavior or responsible in our own decision making. Next, another thing, it's not only capable of acting what is right and wrong, but we are also considered as an intelligent creatures, no? Because our intelligence presupposes our will of choosing or choosing the power of choosing and the scope to act according to our own choices. Okay, so moral action is an action which springs from choice. So it is not necessitated either by mental propulsions or external circumstances. So therefore, our moral actions are based on our own free will. So in other words, no one compelled us to do what we want to do, but instead it is based on our own knowledge. That is why intelligence. It's based on our own will. That is why it's free. And moreover, since that it's we are intelligent and free beings, we have also to consider responsibility or accountability. So in other words, that in everything that we do, we are held accountable for our own actions. So it is distinguished on the one hand from instinctive action. Mm. So when something or someone is deemed a moral agent, it does not necessarily mean that they are meant, no, that they are successfully making moral decisions. So in other words, that since that we are a moral agent, it does not necessarily mean, it's not mean, it's mean that we are successful in making moral decisions. Sometimes we can also committed mistakes. So in committing mistakes, we can be blamed for ourselves for our own wrongdoings. Oh, namagay upan, adis-adis mga mag-drug addict pa. Hmm. Naman gani broadcaster or newscaster ng rape pa basta dili ng abuso o minor. So that is it. He's a moral agent. But in the other hand, because of what he did, his actions are morally unacceptable. Okay, a moral agent must be a living creature, of course. A dead man can tell no tales. Dead man tells no tales. Oh, and a dead man or a corpse cannot act on itself. So it should be a living creature. Moreover, able to comprehend abstract moral principles. That is why we're intelligent beings. And to apply them in our own decision making. So they must have number one, we are self conscious. Number two, we have a memory, moral principles, values, and reasoning faculty, which allows him to devise plans for achieving his objectives, to weigh alternatives, and so on. Okay, so let's proceed with Aristotle. Aristotle was born on 384 and he died on 322 BC. Now, Aristotle was also explained, no, in his Nicomachean Ethics about moral responsibility. So, he was the first one to discuss moral responsibility, that he stated that it is sometimes appropriate to respond to an agent with praise or blame. So if he did something good, of course we praise the person. But he did something wrong, we blame the person, no? On the basis. So what's the basis of our praise or blame? It is the basis of our actions, or not only actions, but also his character. Moral character niya. So he discusses that only a certain kind of agent qualifies as a moral agent and is thus properly subject to ascriptions of responsibility, namely, one who possesses a capacity for decision. So it's just the same as before. So a decision is particular kind of desire resulting from deliberation, one that expresses the agent's conception of what is good. So moral agency is not just about which rules to follow, it comes from a way of life. So that is why Aristotle devises a virtue ethics, a virtuous life, which necessitates a unison of thought and feeling. So sometimes people would really like to help you, but if your behavior is just like that, ayaw na lang. Okay, so let's play the video.
Moral agent. A moral agent is a person who has the ability to discern right from wrong and to be held accountable for his or her own actions. Moral agents have a moral responsibility not to cause unjustified harm. Traditionally, moral agency is assigned only to those who can be held responsible for their actions. Children and adults with certain mental disabilities may have little or no capacity to be moral agents. Adults with full mental capacity relinquish their moral agency only in extreme situations, like being held hostage. By expecting people to act as moral agents, we hold people accountable for the harm they cause others. So, do corporations have moral agency? As artificial intelligence develops, will robots have moral agency? And what about socially intelligent non-human animals, such as dolphins and elephants? Indeed, future philosophers and legal scholars will need to consider moral agency as it applies to these situations and others.
Okay. Okay, so to call something right, the abstract tells us a little to tell what the criteria are for making the assessment, we need a context, so otherwise, we simply don't know what it means. The value judgments, prescriptive judgments, although both normative, may either be moral or non-moral. So these frames of reference include etiquette, or the law, economics, religion, self-interest, fascism, Marxism, sexism, racism. The actions they prescribe can often do conflict, just as the things considered to be valuable can vary radically among them. No? So whatever its exact nature, morality has also emerged in human affairs and represents the frame of reference along with these others. And whatever the most plausible account of how one judges right and wrong from moral point of view. So what is believed to be morally right and wrong clearly often conflicts with what is right and wrong from the other perspective. So that is why, guys, so we can this is where we can um, this is where the moral standards and the moral dilemmas can come in, or no. Okay, so what is a moral standard, no? So here differences between a moral and non-moral standard. So it refers to the norms. Moral standard refers to the norms which we have about the types of actions which we believe to be morally acceptable and morally unacceptable. So what is acceptable, it's good. What is morally unacceptable is something that we have to avoid. But not only the moral standard, but there are also things that are non-moral standards. So when you say non-moral standards, refer to rules that are unrelated to moral or ethical considerations. Just an example, an etiquette, no, refers to the norms of correct conduct in a polite society, or more generally to any special code of social behavior or courtesy. For example, um, uh, you know, last year, 2 years ago, when I ate in a fine dining restaurant in Q Hotel in Ana. Oh, it's a expensive restaurant. So of course, the people are dining there. Those people coming from the elite. So uh, so you have to observe the proper table etiquette. No, for example, in sipping a soup, ana gyud pagawas. Hmm? Pagawas gyud ba? But on the other hand, if you try to dine in SM sa food court, people will not uh, di man sila mo tan-aw nimo unsay imong unsay position sa gika as long as that you enjoy what you're eating. So that is why what I did, okay ra kinamot, okay ra butang upa adri sa kuan lingkuranan. So ana. And for the elites, if you do that, that is unethical. Oh, that not unethical, but I can say it's a violation of the etiquette. No? For example, some of you here are already having their boyfriends and girlfriends. Kung ikaw, babae ka, mag-date mo, naglakaw mo sa dan. Oh, in dating etiquette of walking the street, dapat ang lalaki gyud mismo ato gyud sa side sa kalsada. Ang babae ato gyud sa safe nga lugar. So that is an etiquette, no? Just that is one of the example of dating etiquette. Now statutes, what I mean statutes are laws, no, enacted by the legislative bodies, no. The law prohibits a theft is a statute. Oh, a law that denies the franchise of a certain network is also a statute. That is why Congress and state legislatures enact statutes. For example, 1987 Constitution, the Republic Act, the Executive Order, they are what we call it statutes. Next. Mm. Professional codes of ethics are the rules that are supposed to govern the conduct of the members of the given profession. The best example of professional codes of ethics is the Republic Act 6713, or otherwise known as the Code of Conduct, the Code of Conduct for Ethical Conduct of Public Officials and Employees. No, so if you're a public official, elected official, or a government employee, you have to follow that law, no? Because failure to do so would mean that you will be charged with administrative case, and and yun na gyud. If you violated that, administratibo pa ka plus tangtang ka sa public service. Just an example of a last summer, no, a public school teacher nga iyahang gikuan si the president, no, gibaharan niya life of patyon kuno niya for an amount of 50 million pesos. So what happened to him? Preso siya. Oh, sedition. Oh, plus igo siya sa Republic Act 6713. Recently, a teacher, no, nga when the president cases on the ground, gihimuan og meme nga nagkaon og dog food. So what happened to the teacher? He was, or she was kicked out from the Miriam, or from a certain college, no, Miriam College. So just an example. So all of us are bound to follow these rules, no, codes of ethics. Now, next.
Hello, my Philonotes friends. With our simple whiteboard presentations, we hope to help you in learning the key topics of philosophy in an incredibly easy way. So if you'd want to learn more about philosophy and you're new here, don't forget to subscribe. Just click the subscribe button below and tap the bell so you get notified of our newest whiteboard edition. Today, we will talk about an important topic in ethics, that is about moral standards versus non-moral ones. To start off, one may ask the question, why the need to distinguish moral standards from non-moral ones? It is important to note that different societies have different moral beliefs, and that our beliefs are deeply influenced by our own culture and context. For this reason, some values do have moral implications while others don't. Let us consider, for example, the wearing of a hijab. For sure, in traditional Muslim communities, the wearing of hijab is the most appropriate act that women have to do in terms of dressing up. In fact, for some Muslims, showing parts of a woman's body, such as the face and legs, is despicable. However, in many parts of the world, especially in Western societies, most people don't mind if women barely cover their bodies. As a matter of fact, the Hollywood canon of beauty glorifies a sexy and slim body and the wearing of extremely daring dress. The point here is that people in the West may have pitied Muslim women who wear hijab, while some Muslims may find women who dress up daringly despicable. And so this clearly shows that different cultures have different moral standards. What is a matter of moral indifference, that is a matter of taste in one culture, may be a matter of moral significance in another. Now, the danger here is that one culture may impose its own cultural standards on others, which may result in a clash in cultural values and beliefs. When this happens, as we may already know, violence and crime may ensue, such as religious violence and ethnic cleansing. So, how can we address this cultural conundrum? This is where the importance of understanding the difference between moral standards and non-moral ones comes in. This issue may be too obvious and insignificant for some people, but understanding the difference between the two may have far-reaching implications. For one, once we have distinguished moral standards from non-moral ones, of course through the aid of the principles and theories in ethics, we will be able to identify fundamental ethical values that may guide our actions. Indeed, once we know that particular values and beliefs are non-moral, we will be able to avoid running the risk of falling into the pit of cultural reductionism and the unnecessary imposition of one's own cultural standards on others. The point here is that if such standards are non-moral, then we don't have the right to impose them on others. But if such standards are moral ones, such as not killing or harming people, then we may have the right to force others to act accordingly. In this way, we may be able to find a common moral ground, such as agreeing not to steal, lie, cheat, kill, harm, and deceive our fellow human beings. Now, what are moral standards, and how do they differ from non-moral ones? Moral standards are norms that individuals or groups have about the kinds of actions believed to be morally right or wrong, as well as the values placed on what we believe to be morally good or morally bad. Moral standards normally promote the good, that is, the welfare and well-being of humans as well as animals and the environment. Moral standards therefore prescribe what humans ought to do in terms of rights and obligations. According to some scholars, moral standards are the sum of combined norms and values. In other words, norms plus values equal moral standards. On the one hand, norms are understood as general rules about our actions or behaviors. For example, we may say, "We are always under the obligation to fulfill our promises," or "It is always believed that killing innocent people is absolutely wrong." On the other hand, values are understood as enduring beliefs or statements about what is good and desirable or not. For example, we may say, "Helping the poor is good," or "Cheating during exams is bad." According to many scholars, moral standards have the following characteristics. First, moral standards deal with matters we think can seriously injure or benefit humans, animals, and the environment, such as child abuse, rape, and murder. Second, moral standards are not established or changed by the decisions of authoritative individuals or bodies. Indeed, moral standards rest on the adequacy of the reasons that are taken to support and justify them. For sure, we don't need a law to back up our moral conviction that killing innocent people is absolutely wrong. Third, moral standards are overriding. That is, they take precedence over other standards and considerations, especially of self-interest. Fourth, moral standards are based on impartial considerations. Hence, moral standards are fair and just. And lastly, moral standards are associated with special emotions and vocabulary. Non-moral standards, on the other hand, refer to standards by which we judge what is good or bad and right or wrong in a non-moral way. Examples of non-moral standards are standards of etiquette, by which we judge manners as good or bad, standards we call the law, by which we judge something as legal or illegal, and standards of aesthetics, by which we judge art as good or rubbish. Hence, we should not confuse morality with etiquette, law, aesthetics, or even with religion. As we can see, non-moral standards are matters of taste or preference. Hence, a scrupulous observance of these types of standards does not make one a moral person. Violation of said standards also does not pose any threat to human well-being. Finally, may this serve as an example of a way of distinguishing moral standards from non-moral ones. If a moral standard says, "Do not harm innocent people," or "Don't steal," a non-moral standard says, "Don't text while driving," or "Don't talk while the mouth is full." Alright, that's it for today. Keep looking forward to our series of daily whiteboard editions as we try to make the learning and understanding of philosophy incredibly easy. Thanks for joining us today in this edition of our daily whiteboard here at Philo Notes. Full transcript of this video is available at
So let's proceed. This one, the moral dilemma, no? So when you say a moral dilemma, it is a conflict. So it's a conflict by which you have to choose between two or more actions, and you have the moral reasons for choosing each action. So what is common to the well-known cases is conflict. Now, when can we say a situation becomes a moral dilemma? So number one, so you are presented with two or more actions, all of which you have the ability to perform. Next, so there are moral reasons for you to choose each of the actions. So in each of those two choices, you have to choose. So wala jud kay kakuan. You have to choose each of those actions, and by your choice, so you have your moral reasons why you choose to do such thing. Okay, for number three, you cannot perform all of the actions and have to choose which action, no? So you cannot perform all of these things, but you need to choose one from the other. Or actions when there are three or more choices to perform. Okay.
Hello, Philo Notes friends. Welcome back for another whiteboard discussion that is intended to help you in understanding the key concepts in philosophy in an incredibly easy way. And so, today, we will address an important question in ethics. What are moral dilemmas? First of all, let us define the term dilemma before we discuss the nature and dynamics of moral dilemmas. A dilemma is a situation where a person is forced to choose between two or more conflicting options, neither of which is acceptable. As we can see, the key here is that the person has choices to make that will all have results she does not want. For example, a town mayor faces a dilemma about how to protect and preserve a virgin forest, and at the same time, allow miners and loggers for economic development in the town. It must be noted, however, that if a person is in a difficult situation but is not forced to choose between two or more options, then that person is not in a dilemma. The least that we can say is that that person is just experiencing a problematic or distressful situation. Thus, the most logical thing to do for that person is to look for alternatives or solutions to address the problem. When dilemmas involve human actions which have moral implications, they are called ethical or moral dilemmas. Moral dilemmas, therefore, are situations where persons, who are called moral agents in ethics, are forced to choose between two or more conflicting options, but neither of which resolves the situation in a morally acceptable manner. Let's consider this scenario as an example. Lindsay is a deeply religious person, hence she considers killing humans absolutely wrong. Unfortunately, it is found out that Lindsay is having an ectopic pregnancy. As is well known, an ectopic pregnancy is a type of pregnancy that occurs outside the uterus, most commonly in the fallopian tubes. In other words, in ectopic pregnancy, the fetus does not develop in the uterus. Now, if this happens, the development of the fetus will definitely endanger the mother. Thus, if Lindsay continues with her pregnancy, then there is a big possibility that she will die. According to experts, the best way to save Lindsay's life is to abort the fetus, which necessarily implies killing the fetus. If we do not abort the fetus, then Lindsay, as well as the fetus, will die. In this example of a moral dilemma, Lindsay is faced with two conflicting options. Namely, either she resorts to abortion, which will save her life, but at the same time jeopardizes her moral integrity, or does not resort to abortion but endangers her life as well as the fetus. Indeed, Lindsay is faced with a huge moral dilemma. According to Karen Allen, there are three conditions that must be present for situations to be considered moral dilemmas. First, the person or the agent of a moral action is obliged to make a decision about which course of action is best. Here, the moral agent must choose the best option and act accordingly. In Lindsay's case, she may opt to abort the fetus as the best course of action. Second, there must be different courses of action to choose from. Hence, as already pointed out, there must be two or more conflicting options to choose from for moral dilemmas to occur. And third, no matter what course of action is taken, some moral principles are always compromised. This means that, according to Allen, there is no perfect solution to the problem. And for this reason, according to Benjamin Labastine, in moral dilemmas, the moral agent seems fated to commit something wrong, which implies that she is bound to morally fail, because in one way or another, she will fail to do something which she ought to do. In other words, by choosing one of the possible moral requirements, the person also fails on others. Now, let's proceed to the different types of moral dilemmas. There are several types of moral dilemmas, but the most common of them are categorized into the following. First, epistemic and ontological dilemmas. Second, self-imposed and world-imposed dilemmas. Third, obligation dilemmas and prohibition dilemmas. And fourth, single agent and multi-person dilemmas. Epistemic moral dilemmas involve situations wherein two or more moral requirements conflict with each other, and that the moral agent hardly knows which of the conflicting moral requirements takes precedence over the other. In other words, the moral agent here does not know which option is morally right or wrong. For instance, I ought to honor my promise to my son to be home early, but on my way home I saw a sick old man who needs to be brought to the hospital. Where does my actual duty lie? We cannot deny that there are conflicting duties here, but we need to note that we want a fuller knowledge of the situation. Is an important purpose being served by my getting home early? How serious is the condition of the sick old man? Indeed, I could hardly decide which option is morally right in this situation. However, one option must be better than the other. Only it needs fuller knowledge of the situation. Thus the term epistemic moral dilemmas. Ontological moral dilemmas, on the other hand, involve situations wherein two or more moral requirements conflict with each other, yet neither of these conflicting moral requirements overrides each other. This is not to say that the moral agent does not know which moral requirement is stronger than the other. The point is that neither of the moral requirements is stronger than the other. Hence, the moral agent can hardly choose between the conflicting moral requirements. For instance, a military doctor is attending to the needs of the wounded soldiers in the middle of the war. Unfortunately, 2 soldiers urgently need a blood transfusion. However, only 1 bag of blood is available at the moment. To whom shall the doctor administer the blood transfusion? For sure, we could not tell whether administering a blood transfusion to soldier A is more moral than administering a blood transfusion to soldier B, and vice versa. Now, let's proceed to the second category of moral dilemmas, that is, self-imposed moral dilemma and world-imposed moral dilemmas. A self-imposed moral dilemma is caused by the moral agent's wrongdoings. For example, David is running for the position of town mayor. During the campaign period, he promised the indigenous peoples in his community to protect their virgin forest just to gain their votes. But at the same time, he seeks financial support from a mining corporation. Fortunately, David won the elections, yet he is faced with the dilemma of fulfilling his promise to the indigenous peoples and at the same time allows the mining corporation to destroy their forest. Indeed, through his own actions, David created a situation in which it is impossible for him to be discharged from both obligations. A world-imposed moral dilemma, on the other hand, means that certain events in the world place the agent in a situation of moral conflict. William Styron's famous Sophie's Choice is a classic example. Sophie Tsevitstovska has been asked to choose which of her 2 children, Eva or Jan, will be sent to the gas chamber in Auschwitz. An SS doctor, Fritz Jemen von Niemand, will grant a dispensation to only one of Sophie's children. If she does not choose which one should live, Dr. von Niemand will send both to their death. Sophie chooses her daughter Eva to go to the gas chamber. Her son Jan is sent to the children's camp. Now, on the third category of moral dilemmas, we have obligation dilemmas and prohibition dilemmas. Obligation dilemmas are situations in which more than one feasible action is obligatory, while prohibition dilemmas involve cases in which all feasible actions are forbidden. The famous Sartre student is a classic example of obligation dilemma. It reads, Sartre uses the anecdote of a former student's moral dilemma during the World War II to illustrate both the limits of making decisions based on a defined moral code and the erroneousness of blaming passions for people's actions. The French student's brother was killed in 1940 by the Germans, but his father nonetheless later abandoned the family to collaborate with the Germans. The student had to choose between staying in France with his mother, who found her only comfort in him, and leaving to fight with the Free French against the German occupation. After realizing he was caught between moral principles, or family and nation, or the obligation to care for his mother and the obligation to avenge his brother's death, he came to Sartre for advice. The philosopher told his student that there was no correct or incorrect decision. Neither moral codes nor the strength of his affections for one or the other party could determine what to do. Rather, the student had to invent his own solution to the problem. On the other hand, the famous Sophie's Choice mentioned earlier is a classic example of prohibition dilemmas. Finally, in single-agent dilemma, the agent ought, all things considered, to do A, ought, all things considered, to do B, and she cannot do both A and B. In other words, the moral agent is compelled to act on 2 or more equally the same moral options, but she cannot choose both. For instance, a medical doctor found out that her patient has HIV. For sure, the medical doctor may experience tension between the legal requirement to report the case and the desire to respect confidentiality. Although the medical code of ethics acknowledges our obligation to follow legal requirements and to intervene to protect the vulnerable. In multi-person dilemma, on the other hand, the situation is such that one agent P1 ought to do A, a second agent P2 ought to do B, and though each agent can do what he ought to do, it is not possible both for P1 to do A and P2 to do B. According to Benjamin Labastine, the multi-person does not, inasmuch as agents X, Y, and Z may possibly have chosen conflicting moral choices. That is, person X chooses A instead of B and C, and person Y chooses B instead of A and C, and so on and so forth. The multi-person dilemma occurs in situations that involve several persons, like a family, an organization, or a community, who is expected to come up with consensual decision on a moral issue at hand. A family may be torn between choosing to terminate or prolong the life of a family member. An organization may have to choose between complying with a wage law by cutting its workforce or by retaining its current workforce by paying them below the required minimum wage. The multi-person dilemma requires more than choosing what is right. It also entails that the persons involved reached a general consensus. In such a manner, the moral obligation to do what is right becomes more complicated in the multi-person dilemma. On the one hand, the integrity of the decision ought to be defended on moral grounds. On the other hand, the decision must also prevent the organization from breaking apart. That ends our discussion on moral dilemmas, and thank you for visiting us today for another whiteboard edition here at PhiloNotes. Full transcript of this video is available at philonotes.com.
Okay. So let us move further. Moral dilemmas and the doctrine of double effect. So here, the moral principle applies to a situation in which the good effect and an evil effect will result from a good cause. No? And the principle of double effect here is a person is morally permitted to do an act, same as with moral dilemma, which has both a good and evil effect. If there's no other way to get the good effect if the following conditions are met. Okay. So the act itself must be morally good or at least neutral, no? And the person must directly intended the good effect. So just an example a while ago has been given, no? That a deeply religious woman, the name of Lindsay, no? That she was given the choice either if she want to survive, so she has the choice to to remove the fetus from her fallopian tube. But if she chooses to allow the baby to stay alive, so di yun siya magpakuan, dili niya tantango na bata, and it will also be given a great effect, lethal effect on her as well as on the baby. But the purpose here of removing the baby from the fallopian tube, or otherwise some others would say that it is an abortion, so your intention is not to abort, basically. Because abortion is a direct killing of an infant inside their womb. Mo man jud na ang abortion. But the your your intention here is not to abort the baby, but the intention here is for you to stay alive. Mm. Pero on the other hand, if your intention is to prolong your life, diba? The good effect must be greater than its evil effect. So if you choose your life, it is still good, but it also produces the evil effect on the other. Unsa may evil effect? Moto ang katong so ang consequence mamatay jud ang bata. Oh, so mo na siya punto ana. So to remove the baby from the fallopian tube or the fetus, it will also imply nga mamatay jud ang fetus. So number 4, the good effect must not be obtained by an evil effect. Oh, so as I've said, mo na to siya, no? For example, another thing here, abortion gihapon, and she's pregnant, a woman, she's pregnant, no? And her health is deteriorated, no? And then the doctors would tell her, okay, so this is your kuan, you need to sign a waiver unsa man jud para iwas ang doktor sa alanganin or sa accountability. Okay, mo na. Choose asa ka ikaw mabuhi o ang bata mabuhi. So which is which, no? So that's the idea there. Principle of double effect. Another example. Oh, the best example, guys, katong ABS-CBN franchise, no? It is a double effect. Why? Because the company has committed illegal activities, no, alleged illegal activities. But on the other hand, the 4,000 employees will be affected if the network will be closed. So, asa man ka? You want to save the employees? Okay, allow the network company to continue or the media company to continue their illegal activities. But if you choose to shut down the network, the media company, it would also give a negative effect of the employees. So matangtang yun ang ma-retrench yun ang mga empleyado. So now, in the principle of double effect, the reason why you do not want the reason for your choice nga i-deny nimo ang yang franchise, yun ana, the reason is not it's not in the intention nga matangtang ang katong mga empleyado, but your intention was really to the intention of the congressman was really to avoid the wrongdoings done by the media company ABS-CBN. So that is the double effect there. Anyway, naamoy assignment ani. Okay. Next.
Welcome back to Carneades.org. Today we're going to be continuing with our series, Dumbfounding Definitions, Dizzying Distinctions, and Diabolical Doctrines, a series starting through some of the jargon of philosophy. In this video we're going to be answering the question, what is the doctrine of double effect? Now, You're alone in an out-of-control trolley rushing down the tracks. You're about to hit a branch in the tracks. Currently, the trolley is going towards 5 men stuck on the tracks. If you flip the switch, the trolley will change directions and go rushing towards 1 man stuck on the tracks. What do you do? Many people would say you should flip the switch and kill 1 instead of letting 5 die. Now imagine that there is a runaway trolley headed for 5 men stuck on the track, but now there is no split. However, this time you're on the side of the track, and there is a very fat man standing in front of you. You know for sure that if you push him in front of the trolley, it will stop before hitting the men, but it will kill the man that you just put in front of the trolley. What do you do? Though these seem like similar situations, killing 1 to stop 5 from dying, most people would say you shouldn't push someone in front of a trolley, but you should flip the switch. So it's a question for us in our ethical theories to determine what makes these two cases different. The doctrine of double effect offers one explanation of these conflicting intuitions. The doctrine of double effect has been used by the Catholic Church for many years and is one of the accomplishments of St. Thomas Aquinas. Check out my series on ethics for more on this. The doctrine of double effect is a method for determining if you can act in a situation where the side effects of your action are both positive and negative. There are several different formulations of this doctrine, but most simply, you may take an action which would produce both a good and a bad effect if and only if the situation is sufficiently serious, your intent is to produce the good effect, the bad effect is not the way the good effect is produced, and the act is not inherently wrong. So basically, it has to be serious enough to justify having both a good and a bad effect. You must want to be producing the good effect and just kind of see the bad effect as a necessary consequence of that. And the bad effect can't be the way the good effect is produced. You can't use the bad effect to produce the good effect. You can't use the torture to get the information that would save someone, for example. And the act itself, whatever it is you're doing, isn't inherently wrong or inherently forbidden by some other part of our ethical system. Another way to think of this kind of more simply is the good effect should be a result of the action, not the bad effect. And if you could attain the good effect without the bad effect, you would. So let's take a look at how that deals with the trolley problem. Since we are using the fat man to stop the trolley, the good effect of saving the men is a direct result of the bad effect of killing someone. Therefore, the action is wrong. However, switching the train to another track saves the 5 men, not because the 1 man is killed, but because of the action itself, the switching to a different track. And the 1 person could run off the track at the last second and the good effect would still be achieved, because the good effect isn't a result of the bad effect. But if the fat man jumped off the track before being killed, the goal would not be accomplished. However, there are some problems for this doctrine. A well-known one is the loop trolley problem. In this problem, you're back on the trolley and you can send it down one of 2 paths. One path goes straight to where there are 5 men on the tracks, and the other goes on a diversion where there is a fat man that will stop the trolley. If you flip the switch, the fat man will die, the trolley will stop, and the 5 people will be saved. If you do not, the 5 people will die and the fat man will be saved. What should you do? Now, this is a problem for the doctrine of double effect, since the common intuition is that you should push the switch and flip the trolley onto the other track. However, the good effect would not be caused by that action, since if the fat man ran off the track, the 5 people would still die. But in fact, it's caused by the bad effect of the man dying. So this is unacceptable for the doctrine. Basically, since if the fat men were able to get off the tracks, the 5 men would still die, according to the doctrine of double effect, you should let the trolley kill the 5 people instead of diverting it onto another track. What do you think? Should you flip the switch? Is there a way we can modify the doctrine of double effect to resolve this objection? Write your answers in the comments below, and for more on ethics, the doctrine of double effect, and agent-centered deontological theories of ethics, such as the ones in which the doctrine of double effect is used, check out my series on ethics, the good, the bad, and philosophy. Watch this video and more here at carneades.org, and stay skeptical, everybody.
Okay, so thank you for watching. Have a nice day.